lot of people see war as fighting on the front lines. They never get to see anything else that goes on. Some people don't get recognized for what they did. Mr. Schlegel played a very important role in the Korean War. He might not have fought in any battles, but he still had a job to do. On the day August 27, 1934, Mr. Schlegel was born in Lebanon, Pennsylvania. As a kid, Mr. Schlegel loved outside activities such as camping in the woods. This made training camp much easier for him later on. Mr. Schlegel decided to enlist in the Army right out of high school, along with some of his friends. At first, he requested to be an airplane mechanic. He wanted his occupation in the military to be something he could use once he got out of the service. Unfortunately, he did not get to be a mechanic. Instead, he was assigned a guard in a refueling base in Saudi Arabia in the 1950s. Before Mr. Schlegel was flown to Saudi Arabia, though, he had to go through boot camp. How did you arrive at your base?
Well, my first assignment after I enlisted was basic training at Sampson Air Force Base. That's in New York. And after 3 months of basic training, I was shipped to Rome Air Force Base, Rome City, Griffiths Air Force Base in Rome, New York. And after about a year stationed there, in 1954, we were flown over to Saudi Arabia.
What was training like?
Training, to me, I think being a country boy, was I enjoyed it. It was a lot of, I enjoyed going through the trials and stuff, and the marching and through the training and crawling under the barbed wire fences and jumping over the water. I was good at that stuff. I enjoyed it. When I was a young kid, I used to go out in the woods a lot, camp and stuff like that, and shooting, and I enjoyed the shooting range. We had a lot of fun. To me, that was enjoyable, shooting the different weapons that we had in those days.
Where were you trained at?
In Sampson Air Force Base is where I took my basic training, and that is no longer in existence.
Mr. Schlegel traveled to New York to Griffiths Air Force Base in Rome, New York. There he enjoyed many tasks they had to perform, such as the shooting range and crawling under barbed wire fences. After basic training, it was time for Mr. Schlegel to go to Saudi Arabia. Mr. Schlegel and some of his colleagues, however, fell into a difficult situation. Mr. Schlegel, as well as some other trainees, missed their flight to Saudi Arabia. When they first got to the airport, they were told they had a certain amount of time until they had to return. When they got back to the airport, they saw their plane taking off. They had to island hop to catch back up with their plane. One island they visited was the Azores. Eventually, they caught up with their flight later that day to their new base. Once they caught back up with their unit, they got yelled at. During this time in Saudi Arabia, as Mr. Schlegel had experienced many strange and interesting things. The food was very enjoyable for him. He appreciated the fact that it wasn't the same food in the United States. Usually, the locals would provide food.
Then, one morning, while Mr. Schlegel was guarding his base, he and another guard noticed some people gathered around their gate, so they went to go see what the problem was. There, he saw a very repulsive image. A thief was punished for what he had done. The man had been brutally decapitated and his hands and feet were chopped off. A common punishment in Saudi Arabia. In Saudi Arabia, many things are different from the U.S. Mr. Schlegel really had to be aware of what he was doing at all times.
In Saudi Arabia, and you can see the punishment that they do to their citizens over there. It's pretty severe and pretty nasty. This was right outside our main gate on the base I was stationed on, Dhahran Air Force Base, and pretty nasty.
In Saudi Arabia, there were some nice people and some mean people. Mr. Schlegel learned this the hard way. One evening, Mr. Schlegel went to go get a suit made. He met with a man who measured him and came up with a price estimate. The price set for the suit was $25, and the tailor asked for the money ahead of time. Mr. Schlegel paid the man and did not return for a while, giving the man time to make the suit. A while later, Mr. Schlegel went back to the man to see what the progress was. When he reached where he met the man earlier, he was told the tailor left the country.
Tailors over there, and they would make a suit just to fit you, measure you up and fit you and everything. And I remember one incident, you'd order a suit be made, and then this Arabian fella would measure you up for the suit. I got a coat made out of cashmere, a really nice fancy top coat, and I still have that today. But I know one incident, I wanted to get a suit made, and the guy required $20 down, so I gave him $20, and later on I went back to see what the progress was, and I was told he left the country. So I lost my $20 and never heard from him again, and I never did have a suit made then.
Not all Saudi Arabians were bad, however. Some were very nice. When Mr. Schlegel was stationed in Saudi Arabia, he had always had his Saudi Arabian guard with him. Mr. Schlegel's job in the military wasn't exactly a very well-known job, but it was important. Mr. Schlegel's occupation was to guard the refueling base, and it was risky for this reason. Although he may not have been in the front line in Korea being shot at by enemy fighters, he did have to guard fuel with only a club. No guns, just a club. Not only would it have been challenging if someone tried to attack the base if it were attacked, but a man with a club wasn't exactly an intimidating image either. As was said earlier, Mr. Schlegel's job was very important. Although it may not seem as dangerous as some jobs during the Korean War, it certainly was a key part. Now, Mr. Schlegel is 76 years old and a father as well as a grandfather, uncle, great-uncle, and many others. Mr. Schlegel should always be remembered for his military service.